Imagine if I told you before the season started that the Philadelphia Eagles, for God's sakes, were going to be the Super Bowl champions at the end of the year. You probably would have been like, it's the Eagles, there's no way. It's the NFL. Technically, anything is possible, but that's probably a bit ambitious for a team that didn't make the playoffs the year before. Hard to argue with any of that logic. But son of a bitch, it's one of the great things about the NFL, is literally any given year you feel like if you get the right breaks, the right opportunity, the right chances, a lot of fan bases feel like they have at least some type of reason to believe they could potentially win the Super Bowl. And the Eagles are a reminder of that. Just like the Rams were back in 1999. And other times this has happened. Where teams that have been bad all of a sudden get really, really good really quickly. It can happen. And that's the appeal in some ways of the NFL. Now imagine if I told you the Eagles were going to win the Super Bowl after Carson Wentz tears his ACL late in the regular season, and it's Nick Foles who saves the day, and still, in my humble opinion, when it mattered most, outplayed Tom Brady in the freaking Super Bowl. The odds placed in Vegas on something like that happening would have been astronomical. And probably nobody would have taken that bet, and they would have wished that they had. The Philadelphia Eagles are freaking Super Bowl champions. You know what? Good for Philly. Good for you. No hate here. You finally got that monkey off your back. And now you look at it. Defending Super Bowl champions, got Carson Wentz coming back. You've brought in some veteran role players at this stage of their career like Philadephia and Michael Bennett. You're adding strength to strength. You got a pretty good core and nucleus there. You played without Jason Peters most of the year. This is a team that feels like it could be right back in the mix again in 2018. So, as the defending Super Bowl champions, without a ton of holes on their roster, bringing in some of the guys that they have, they didn't have a ton of needs. And I'm not really all that surprised that they weren't that incredibly interested, let's be honest, in this year's draft. They had already previously traded away the second-round pick, I think it was, in that Carson Wentz deal back in 2016. The third-round pick was traded away as part of the Ronald Darby deal. And then they're sitting there picking at pick 32 in round 1 without a clear-cut need. So it makes sense to try and bail out of that pick. And they did. And in the process, they were able to get a second-round pick in the 2019 draft, which they feel like was huge for the Eagles, because I don't want to say they completely dismiss a draft or just don't care about one. But there, to me, isn't as much of a priority for the Eagles to get a lot out of this year's draft. Whereas next year, as some of these older players, you might need to move on from them. You might develop some holes in the roster. That's where you need to hit harder and better in the draft to maintain and stay viable and stay competitive. They've now got an extra second-round pick to be able to do so. And also, when you look at this draft class, you could kind of lump Sidney Jones in there, the corner from Washington who got hurt during the pre-draft process in 2017, tearing his Achilles. He didn't play really last year, so you could really honestly kind of lump him in as part of this class this year. So it's like getting a first-round talent from last year this go-round. So that makes it a little bit easier to trade and think about the future in terms of the draft. But they still made sure in round 2 that they traded up and got Dallas Goedert, and in the process, it only cost them a 5th-round pick to jump up in front of the Cowboys in round 2 to get him, and I really like the pick. There's nothing illegal about having 2 tight ends that can catch the ball. And I look at Dallas Goedert, and he reminded me some of Zach Ertz. When Ertz was coming out of college, I see some of those same traits in Dallas Goedert. Again, just another guy that can catch the ball. Although I don't quite feel like Goedert has the same upside as Zach Ertz in terms of as a pass catcher. But there, middle to late round 2, worth the shot. Worth adding strength to strength. He'll be a nice number 2 tight end and another guy that could cause some problems. Avonte Maddox tested well at the Combine. He could contribute, provide some depth at the back end of that secondary. Josh Sweat, getting him late in round 4. He's not a perfect fit for the type of defense that the Eagles run, but you're talking about a dude that you're gambling on based off of the twitch and athleticism that he has. You're not expecting him to be a world beater. You're bringing him in for a few defensive snaps a game and get a little bit of pressure, which I think he could potentially be able to do if his bulky knee holds up. And again, getting a guy like that late in round 4 is definitely worth the medical gamble. Absolutely. And then late in the draft, investing in the offensive line, Matt Pryor, the offensive lineman from TCU. And then in round 7, 6'8", 345 pounds of majesty. That is the beast, Jordan Mailata. Go watch this dude play rugby to find out how much badassery there is. I think the one surprise to me is that with his profile and his athleticism, I'm surprised you wouldn't want him playing defense and attacking on the line. But maybe you feel like he's a little too tall for that. But if this dude can develop, 6'8", 340-something pounds, and he can move, if you can teach him and he can learn, he could be an absolute steal. And you know what? If he doesn't learn, then it was a 7th-round pick. Who gives a crap? But totally and completely worth the shot in the dark by the Eagles. What the hell? Why not? If it pans out, great. And if it doesn't pan out, who cares? You're the defending Super Bowl champions, and the Mailata kid was a damn 7th-round pick. So, yeah, for the Eagles draft, there wasn't going to be a lot to come out of it. But you look at the bigger picture, they didn't need a lot to come out of this draft. They got a couple of guys that feel like they could be good fits. Josh Sweat was a worthwhile gamble in round 4. Mailata most certainly was a worthwhile gamble in round 7. If they get anybody to really produce out of this draft class for the Eagles, frankly, it's an added bonus. The 2019 draft is what will matter more. This one, honestly, doesn't so much for the Eagles.